Wonderful.
How's your weekend, Lily?
Good. Very lovely. Yeah.
Good. Middle of the week.
It's already
Halfway.
Wednesday. It's been fall
I
break
know.
for our kiddos, so
Oh yeah.
a
I
little
think
bit
we
of
have another
everything.
week and a half to go. I realize y'all were that much sooner than us.
Hmm.
I was just saying I joined, a few minutes early just to make sure the tech and stuff was working. And this might be the most punctual group of remote participants that I've ever worked with. Amazing. Y'all are on time.
Yes, I love it.
Great. And actually, Lily, can you confirm you all can see the screen that has like the welcome slide, right? Design thinking and
Yes.
innovation. Okay, great.
Hmm.
My little green frame that it usually shows me has disappeared, so I'm just making sure. Okay, great.
Absolutely. All right, it is 1 o'clock, everyone. Do you want me to get started, Lena?
Let's do it.
Okay, I am so excited. Hello, everybody. I'm Lily Massa McKinley with the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. Welcome to our second session of the Leadership Exchange. I'm so excited for today and our topic of design, thinking, and innovation, which is all just a part of our big picture here, putting tools in the toolbox for change leadership, and how each of you individually drives collaborative movements and collaborative projects, collaborative change on your campuses. We really don't do anything in isolation, although we do tend to see a lot of silos on our campuses. We're much more effective when we bring a lot of our different partners together, and really think about how we can accomplish more together than any of us can achieve on our own. If you recall, our first session when we were together in Lexington was really all about thinking about systems and the systemness of our problems, of the challenges that we're really working on, that they're not isolated things, but they're a bunch of things that are meshed together. It was really that illustration of all of the wires that can be tangled up and how we have to kind of pull them apart one by one and thinking about what kind of problem are we really dealing with here? Is it a clear cause and effect problem? Is it more complicated where it's knowable, but you might need some expertise to really understand and explain? Or is it really complex and it's kind of unknowable for now, but we can really learn about it by exploring, by trying different solutions and by figuring out what works. But it is kind of a unique, complex combination of things. And from there, that's how we really figure out how we go about building the teams or the strategies to approach our change. And so I'm really excited to kind of build on that foundation with this work with Lena. Lena has worked with the collaborative on several projects. She is actively working with us right now on student journey mapping in the admissions process. And she is an amazing design thinker and student journey mapper and process mapper and blueprint designer and all of those amazing things. And so we're just really going to learn some great stuff today. So, Lena, I'm going to turn it over to you. And thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for that intro. And actually, it's funny you mentioned those tangled wires that Jack talked about last month because they're maybe making a comeback just for a second today. But yeah, it's nice to meet everybody. I know, I always find it a little bit of a bummer to see just the little squares instead of being in a room together and having a warm cup of coffee, but it'll make do. Thanks for joining. I know it's a busy season. I can't imagine how busy it must be on y'all's end. So I appreciate y'all being here. We're going to spend about 3 hours together, but I swear it'll fly by because we're going to spend first half on some more theoretical kind of intro stuff, and then we'll spend the second half kind of working together in breakout rooms. Like Lily said, my name is Lena Blackstock, and I run a small research studio. We're called Process Practice, and we're based out of Columbus, Indiana, so just up the street from where I'm assuming many of you all are based. Um, we'll have some time for just quick introductions, but before that, I'm going to really briefly talk about why we're here and what we're doing, so you have an overview. So like I said, this is what the afternoon together looks like at a high level. We'll learn a little bit about design thinking as a method and a mindset. and I'll share a couple examples as we go through that. We'll take a short break, stretch legs, refill waters, coffees, whatever your poison of choice, and then we'll spend a bit of time practicing what we've learned. So I'll also, at the end, as we close out, I'll make sure I'll share some resources that you can leverage, both the things that we'll work through together and then just some additional resources you can use. So yeah, like I said, during today's session, we're gonna learn about design thinking tools and mindsets. Both of those are equally important. We'll apply some of those learnings through collaborative exercises. Bear with me, this is a large group and I think we have everything figured out with the tech, but if you are on the Zoom call, you know how tech can sometimes throw a wrench in things. So hopefully everything runs smoothly. And then we'll also gather some new skills and frameworks that we can take with us and bring into our work. So like I said, I usually do intros, but since you all already met each other during the first module and probably before then, I thought maybe we can just do a super short activity to kick it off. I was hoping in the Zoom chat, everyone can just share your name and next to it, describe your job using only emojis. There's a little emoji function in Zoom. It's harder than you think, and you're welcome to steal, copy, and paste from other people. There might be some similar rules here, but while I keep going, do that, drop your names with emojis that describe your job in the chat. I'll go too, because I can't tell you to do something without doing it myself. So I'm a researcher by trade. I do a lot of that, and that, and that. And sometimes it involves herding a lot of cats, which I'm sure some of you can relate to as well. So as you drop your intros in the chat, hopefully that's working for everybody. Again, just your name and a couple emojis would be lovely. It also helps Cameron, who's helping me on the back end, set up the group meeting room. So I'd appreciate it if y'all could help me out here. Okay, I'm a fast talker. I will try to take sips of water in between, especially when I'm remote. If you ever have any kind of questions or any like urgent things, please feel free to just hop off mute and speak up. We're all kind of friends here. That's fine. I won't be offended. Just interrupt me as needed. All right, maybe a quick question for the room, and you can just maybe raise your hand. I'll try to see on the little screens. If there's anybody here familiar with design thinking or has used it as an approach, as a mindset. Any folks? I know some of y'all are still eating. That's totally fine. Maybe a couple of you. Okay, great. So we're not going to go super deep into the theoreticals, but instead I really want to give you a high-level view of the method, some of the modes that we use. And then, like I said, we'll apply it in the second half. I do think that many of your roles from kind of what I've seen about the participant list are designers, right? Like you're all designing things, projects, places, collaborations, services, initiatives, interactions, relationships, all those are things that we design. So hopefully there'll be some tools and tactics that you can integrate into your practice. This is a quote from Tim Brown. If you've heard of design thinking, you might have seen it. He's kind of seen as the godfather of design thinking, co-founder of IDEO. I think it started long before then, but that's for another day. But he says design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. And so one of the core concepts of design thinking is that relentless focus on the user, the customer, the human. And so we do that by integrating the needs of people, which is what we call desirability, the possibilities of technologies, like, is it feasible to build this thing? And then the requirements for business success. Is that a viable solution? And of course, like I said, the user or the customer or the human is always at the center. I mentioned the tangled wires. So I know in your first module with Jack, you talked about the importance of considering the context and the shape of a problem. And Jack talked about social problems and how they're tangled knots of many interrelated and interacting problems. And in anthropology, which is what my background is in, we also call that a wicked problem. And so similarly, design thinking can help us dive into the complexities of a given context, like students' experiences with the admissions journey, which, like Lily said, we're currently working on. We're going to use that as kind of an example practice project today. And it helps us explore the possibilities from just a diversity of perspectives. And so in that process of design thinking, we focus on identifying latent needs, assets, and opportunities. And I think it's important to reiterate that when we take this approach and we start with needs and assets, we ensure that the opportunities that we identify are rooted in the context, the behaviors, and the needs of those that we're aiming to design solutions for. Oh, there's one fun fact, because since you all enjoyed the tangled wires, or maybe Lily and I only did, I don't know if you all did, but one fun fact for anybody that identifies as problem solvers or maybe being solution oriented here, which I would assume is a few of you, I recently learned that the word solution comes from the Latin root solvere, and it means to loosen, to unfasten, and to dissolve, which I thought was great. All right, so if you've heard about design thinking, I saw a couple of hands, or if you've applied it, you might have heard or seen the double diamond. Dun, dun, dun. This is a simplified view of what we mean when we talk about that. Fundamentally, design thinking is modes, methods, and mindsets of creative problem solving through a process of diverging and converging. And it's an iterative, nonlinear process, but you can look at the process as phases of problem framing and problem solving. So like I said, it's an iterative process, but the process tends to go through some key phases that have many different names. It starts with discovery, always. It starts with the human. Sometimes in some of the frameworks, they call it empathize, which I'm not a fan of because empathizing is not a step or a phase. But that's, again, another day. So we go through discovery, then definition, ideation, and of course, prototyping and testing. And then you rinse and repeat as needed. We'll go through some examples in just a second to make it a little bit more tangible. I want to reiterate one more time, the real value is really in that practice of diverging and converging, both in problem framing and problem solving. And so what do we mean when we say diverge? What does converge mean in this context? Again, instead of just talking about it, we're going to practice some of that together. I do want to iterate that in this session, we have a quite large group. 3 hours seems like a long time, but it's not that long. So we're most likely going to cover mostly discover, define, and ideate. And we won't actually prototype and test our ideas today. There's one other way to think about it. I think I kind of alluded to the fact that design thinking has gone through many evolutions. There's many people working in this space, right? It keeps getting iterated on, the framework itself, the process itself, the language we use. And there's one way that I found Dan Nessler talks about it, and I thought I would share it. He created a revamped version of the double diamonds. And he describes the process as moving from don't know could be to do know should be, by making sure that we're doing the right things first and then doing things right. And so to me, that's always stuck with me, that language. Thought I'd share it. Maybe it's one that you enjoy as well. Oh yeah, I did put this in here. So there are many visualizations, like I said, many different versions of that process, that framework. Most important part is it's nonlinear and it's iterative. And that also means that some of those steps may happen several times, and you may even jump back and forth between them. And you see that in some of these illustrations here where, it kind of goes back and forth. They try to illustrate that. I've been working in this space for a while, and I just wanted to say too that in addition to the continuous iterations to this framework and this way of working, there have been equal amounts of criticisms of design thinking as an approach and as a framework, and I agree with some of them. But I think what's interesting is you all started with the session with Jack from Civic Lab, and most of that criticism that I see about design thinking relates back to ensuring that we have the right response to the given problem structure, which is what you all already discussed. And then some of it relates to the process being seen or being applied as this rigid kind of step-by-step process, linear process, which is. So I just wanted to share that as well, so you have that context as you kind of explore this, if you do. And then one last way to think about the double diamonds that you will see everywhere that's resonated with me that I found quite beautiful comes from Jen Brazali. She's also a great system and design thinker. I heard her talk about like these alternating cycles of divergent and convergent thinking that we use in design thinking as something more organic, kind of like lungs, because they move apart and then together, they open a space and then contract it like bellows. Lungs expanding to gather diverse perspectives, information, connections, and then you channel those insights into focused action, which then feeds the next cycle. So I thought it was beautiful. I figured sometimes these different ways of thinking about frameworks help. So I'm sharing them with you. Maybe one of those will resonate more with you than others. All right, I have a couple examples of design thinking being used to improve products, so physical products, services, and also broader ecosystems. So this is actually my favorite story because it's how I found my way into the work that I do now. But design thinking can be quite powerful when we're developing physical products. So this is the measuring cup, and it was developed, this one specifically that I'm talking about, was being developed by the kitchen company OXO. Some of you might have some of their stuff in your kitchen, like a spatula or something. And they were trying to improve on the measuring cup. Kind of hadn't been innovated on in years. And so their innovation team's like, all right, let's figure this out. And they sent a bunch of surveys out to people and they asked, how can we make this better? And people would say things like, change the handle, or, make the font bigger, or make it blue. I don't know. And so they're like, okay, this is not working. And what they ended up doing is they hired design anthropologists to observe people using the product within their context, so in their homes, in their kitchens, and they would observe. And so what they noticed is they would go into the kitchen and people would be doing their baking. They would take the measuring cup, lift it up, pour the flour in, pour it back down, set it back down, pour it, and then lift it up to see how high the flour had gone. And so that was the insight that led them to redesign this product to look like this, which is the measuring cup with a tilted ring that you might have seen, where you can see while you're pouring from the top. And so this, the story is they won a bunch of design awards and it became kind of their best selling product. So huge success for the innovation team. It's also important in digital products, which I spent most part of my career working within that space. But it also shows us how important it is when we're creating entirely new products or categories. And so, for example, I'm not sure if any of you have really ever thought about the symbols and the language that we use in the digital realm, like the trash bin that you have on probably the bottom right corner, or whichever machine you're on, left corner, on your laptop or your desktop. And so, when the computers first came out and first kind of became adopted by everyday people, that idea of file organization and deleting in the digital realm was quite difficult for people to grasp and relate to, really abstract. And so that's when understanding existing mental models, like throwing no longer needed documents into the trash bin, can help create that bridge between desired behavior for a new product or service and the user's current behavior and understanding in their mental models. So I thought this was just a nice example of how understanding human needs, behaviors, and their mental models helps us create human-centric products and services, especially in the space of innovation. And then one last example from the field. So equally, this kind of approach can be really helpful when designing services and support systems for people, so more broad, kind of looking outwards. I worked on a project a few years ago, and the goal was to understand how people, and especially multi-member households and families, manage and organize their lives. Like, what tools do they use? How do they communicate? What are their mental models? And so, we started out and we asked a lot of questions about organization tools and information management systems and to-do lists and all this stuff. And we were shown a ton of calendars and to-do lists. And then during an in-home visit, so we do in-home immersions, we spent about 3 hours with this young family in Northern California, very rural. And the wife walked us through their home and she kept telling us, oh, we don't really use calendars. We don't really have a system. She just kept saying it just kind of works. And so we're walking through the bedroom with her and I noticed this battery on the bed and I asked, what's this for? She's like, oh, never mind that. That's just to remind my husband to change the batteries in the fire alarms. They keep beeping at me. And she says, if I leave it here, I know he'll see it and get it done. So light bulb moment, right? Like, that's a system of organization and communication, but she didn't see it as that. Like, she wouldn't have vocalized that had I asked her about that. And so it's just what they did. And one of my favorite sayings for when you're doing discovery and the power of observational research is, people don't say what they think or do. The famous quote that always gets used, which is also contentious, but it illustrates it. It's Henry Ford, right? Like, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So this is why discovery is the first step in design thinking. It's where we ensure that we focus on solving the right problem in the first place. All right, I got a super short case study and then we'll move on. This is actually a really great story about a team that's employing design thinking, again, to make sure they're solving the right problem before they're moving forward and focusing on solving the problem well. So the Embrace organization is a nonprofit, but they actually started as a class project that was in an entrepreneurial design for extreme affordability class back in 2007, early 2010. And the original design brief has asked the student team to build an infant incubator that could be used in the hospitals and clinics of Nepal. They wanted it to be less expensive and easier to maintain than traditional Western incubators. So one of the team members actually traveled to Nepal, again, immersion in contextual research, because they wanted to experience the problem firsthand. And they wanted to engage with the doctors, the nurses, the mothers, the babies. And so the student arrived at the hospital in Kathmandu and he saw a lot of functioning donated Western incubators. But what surprised him was they were mostly empty. And so he asked the doctor about it. The doctor told him that most premature babies were born in the rural areas outside of the city, and that mothers were unable to make the trip to the hospital or afford the care. And so for them, again, like that light bulb moment, right? So the original brief asked them to design a cheaper, more durable incubator for hospitals. But what they had discovered was that there were actually thousands of premature babies who would never reach those hospitals or incubators. And so based on that finding, the team redefined the problem. They forgot about traditional incubators and all of the requirements of that. And their mission then became to help give rural women the means to give their dying premature babies a surviving chance. And so that reframe, which we'll go through some reframing later today, of the problem led the team to create an incubator that looks like a sleeping bag. You see it here, it's called the Embrace. And it regulates temperature using a phase-changing material that is activated simply by boiling it in water, which is accessible to most. And it costs less than 1% of a traditional incubator. So they reframed the problem. They had a new point of view, a new way to look at the real challenge to go after. Because when you think about that original design brief that the team was given, the incubators are too expensive, they're hard to maintain, difficult to get parts for, make us a cheaper, better incubator. Had they done just that, if they focused only on like reducing the cost, for example, or the maintenance aspect, they maybe would have gotten a less expensive incubator, but they would have not gotten to this game-changing innovation of Embrace that addresses a previously totally unmet and unknown need to them. I'll pause for a second. I'm doing okay on time. We're gonna practice in a minute. I have a couple like logistical pieces just to make sure the tech's all working properly. But are there any questions? Again, I know I'm a fast talker. I apologize. I try to slow myself down. But any questions so far? Any thoughts while I have a couple minutes here? You're welcome to just hop off mute if you'd like.
Not so much questions, but you please slow down a little bit with the slides as well.
Yes, I will try to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's something I'm aware of, and it's always worse when I'm in a digital space than in person, but I'll try to remind myself. Thank you. All right. Well, with that, we'll move forward. I'll pace myself. We are going to practice, but first, there are a couple rules of engagement for the activities before we break out into teams and we get started in the digital collaborative space that we have set up. You will be in 4 different groups. Hopefully those groups will all even out. There might be a few people that have dropped off, I'm not sure. And you will be working in a tool called Miro. Lily had sent a link ahead of time, so I'm hoping there's no technical issues. Just one final note that I think a couple people had some issues with the browser. I would suggest Chrome as the browser, but they say they also support Firefox and a couple other smaller browsers. So while we're working through those activities and you're working in your groups, I do want to make sure that we follow some basic design thinking rules. They're pretty straightforward. They're what you probably do in your everyday life anyway. But again, in a remote environment, it's sometimes worth a reminder. One conversation at a time, right? Like try to avoid the side conversations if you can so that we can have one conversation. When you're sharing and talking, be clear and concise. We are going to be going pretty quickly through the process. It's just a practice round. So it'll feel kind of fast at moments. Of course, everyone's input is equally valued, and be present. Right, in the digital world, we all have notifications and multiple windows and stuff. So as you're working with your team, I would ask you to be present and put away distractions. All right. I will ask you to make sure that Miro is working for you. Has anybody here used Miro or Mural? Is a similar kind of whiteboard, digital whiteboard tool? Anybody familiar with any of them? A couple people. All right. I will put this link back in the chat, but it's also up here. Give me 1 second. So I would love for everybody to open Miro and meet me there. See if mine will reopen. I see some people showing up. I will make everybody come to me. I'll give you all a second. All right. think everybody is trickling in. Great. All right, 22 people. I'm gonna open this up. So we have our agenda and our teams. It does look like we have some folks who might not be able to make it or are able to participate. So some of these teams might be smaller than they're listed here, but that shouldn't be an issue. So if your team is less than the suggested 9 or 10 people, it's not a problem. We will have the Zoom room set up. I'll give you a real quick overview of some of the features in Miro. Can you all still see my screen share Miro board? It looks a little bit different from yours, but can someone give me a vocal like, yes, you see it?
Yes.
Sweet, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so you're not gonna need too many of the features today, but there's a couple things. So you might have noticed it's kind of an endless white space, like you can zoom in and out pretty far. You can move around with a trackpad. You can also hold down the space bar and it gives you this little hand to move around. And then if you want to zoom in and out and you don't have a trackpad, you can use this minus and plus over here on the bottom right. And then I will be opening up the team workspaces to the right of this. I'll do that as soon as we move over to that side. And then there's a couple features on the left here that you can see. So you see a toolbar. Mine looks a little bit different from yours because I'm in the app, not the browser. But you have the cursor. So again, that's where you can kind of use the little hand to move around and the pointer. You should have a sticky note function that looks like this. So if you look at my screen, it'll pop up a bunch of different colors. You just click it and drop it. It's a little small because I'm far out, but that's the post-it. And then you should have access to the text function, which you might need for some parts, and you can just type anything you want. It'll take a minute to get used to. I understand it's a brand new tool, but I think we will have fun with it. Let's see, I don't think you'll need anything else. I will be having a timer up on the top right corner. You might not be able to see that in your screen yet, but I will be using that for some of the activities. And then I'll actually just unlock this. So we have the workspace open. Are there any questions on Miro? Anybody having issues with kind of navigating it? I know it's a little odd because it's endless.
How did you say you moved the screen over with the hand again?
The space bar. If you hold down the space bar, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. If you click on the screen and you hold down the space bar, it lets you kind of drag it.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on this? And then for the post-it notes, again, it's a little awkward. Sometimes you can copy and paste post-its, but I've created a post-it kind of area for each of you in your spaces. And I'm going to bring you all to this will be the example workspace we will be using. So hang on for a second before you go too deep into all those. I just want to make sure everybody can get in. You will see it in the Miro board, but I'm pulling it up here as well. These are the 4 teams that we have today. We have team 1, blue, team 2 will be red, team 3 is purple, team 4 is green. Again, you might have less people than are listed here, but we'll make it work. All right. So, of course, we're starting with discovery. So this is normally where, especially if we were in person, we would all go out into the field and gather data. So whatever our challenge is, we might go out and observe people's behavior, talk to them in one-on-one interviews, have group discussions, or learn about your target group in other ways. But today we're gonna leverage some raw data that we have available thanks to that ongoing work for the admissions redesign that Lily mentioned. And yes, I see a question about the teams. I know the cursors can be quite overwhelming. I can pull up the teams again for a second here. And then actually I'll just put them in the chat as well. So if you can find your name. Looks like you are in team 4 in the green group, but the Zoom room will also automatically put you in the room that you're supposed to be in. All right, so I also assume for this challenge, you all already know a good amount about students in general. So we're gonna lean on that knowledge a little bit today for the practice exercise, but just note that if you were doing a full design thinking project, we would probably want to make sure that we have a deep contextual understanding of your users' experiences, their behaviors, their needs, their goals through primary research. All right, so this example project that we're going to be using for the activities today, again, it's a project led by the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. We're facilitating diary studies with students to understand their experience as they go through that college admissions journey. And this is the study goal that we started with. How might we leverage a deeper understanding of the student experience in order to create a student-centric, holistic admissions process across university? And so we completed a 3-month pilot earlier this year with a small sample of students, and we're now kicking off a larger study. But we do have data from the study, from the pilot study, that we're going to use for the activities. All right, let's see what we can learn about the experience. I am going to go back into Miro, and I'm going to give you a second to orient yourselves. If you could all find your team workspace, and I've also put the team names in your workspace. So if you go to your team workspace, whatever team number you are, have the list next to it. I was going to mention one other thing. If you guys can see my screen, I know the cursors can be a little overwhelming. I'm not 100% sure if you all have this function, but Stephanie, I think you asked the question. There's a function right here that that lets you hide the cursors. So it kind of takes all that noise away. I prefer to see it as the facilitator so I can see if someone's stuck. But if you'd like, you might be able to turn them off there just to get rid of a little bit of that noise. All right, so I'm going to open the Zoom rooms in a second. I'm hoping they work. If they don't, please give me some grace and you might just get a 5-minute break if I need to redo them, but hopefully they'll work. You'll have 30 minutes to review the data that's in your Teams folder. I will show you where those are. And then you'll have 20 minutes as a team to capture some of the things that you're learning about your students. We're going to be using a tool called Empathy Maps. They are in your team workspace, but I'm going to talk you through a little bit how that framework works in just a second. I'll pause again because I know that's a lot of information. Are there specific things that I can help with? I'm throwing a lot out there. I'll meet you right back in Miro in just a second, but I wanted to share this framework, but I'll pause for a second. Has everybody found their teams? And has everybody been able to kind of access Miro and roughly see where things are? Okay, feel free to speak up, interrupt me, totally fine. I want to make sure everybody can find their way around. I know it's a lot of new stuff to throw at everybody.
I found my
somebody...
team, but I can't find me.
Okay, so let me see. I think, wait, there's a function and I think it's, are you able to, oh, I think it's different for me. Oh, I clicked on this the other day. I think if you try to zoom out, you should be able to see you. You know what I'll do? I'll just bring everybody to me, and that means you'll be at the team workspace. Let's do that. All right, everybody's gonna be pulled to me in the team workspace, and you should be able to see kind of your cursor, hopefully. And I'll help in a second. All right, so the participant data document, we tested it before with someone who had the link and they were able to access, but we'll make sure that that works in just a second. Hold off just a second on the participant data so I can walk you through the activity. So every team will have one student. It's an alias name that we gave them, but you will have one student assigned to you that you're gonna look at some data you have from our study, which will include some quotes, some video snippets, and then kind of a self-created journey map that each student created of their experience with the admissions journey. And so once I open those Zoom rooms as a team, you'll review the information. If you look at the team workspaces, the very top of your team workspace will have the participant alias name and a link. Once you click on that box with a Google Drive, a little arrow pops up and that takes you to that link. And I can help with that in a second. After you have you reviewed the data, I think there's somebody who might be not on mute, if you could hop on mute. Once you've reviewed the data in your Zoom rooms, after 10 minutes, we will fill out an empathy map for your participant. So I'm going to actually go to my practice space. And I'll put it all down here with me. So this is just the practice space. This is what the empathy map looks like. This is where you're going to capture what you're learning. Empathy maps are a nice design tool to just help capture what we know about our users. They help capture insights about behaviors and attitudes. We alluded to some of this in the examples, but that's anything from observable things like what they do through to inferred thoughts and feelings and things that they say. And often getting these onto a canvas helps you to synthesize research observations and reveal deeper insights about a user's needs in a visual format. And so I'll walk through this exercise quickly, but I'll also try to pop into the different Zoom rooms to see if anybody needs help. And I think you can also message me while you're in them. So what we're gonna start with, I'm actually gonna go real quick to this real quick. We're gonna start with the goal, which you see as number 1 and 2 at the top of the empathy map. Number 1 is the description of a person that represents your user. So you want to think about their role and the situation that you're interested in helping them with. And then number 2 is what they're trying to do. That could be a decision they need to make, articulating what success looks like to them. So I'll put something pretty broad for mine for now, like incoming college freshmen. That's who we're empathizing with. And you can add your participant's alias there when you're working with your team or anything else that you know about them as you review the data. And then for the goal, we can put something broad right now for the example, like apply to my dream college. Again, you can revise this depending on what you learn about your student. And then you see how these are numbers. We're going to go around the head first. So we'll go through number 3 through 6, where everybody in your group can grab those virtual Post-it notes and join in, trying to capture what we know about the world of the user that we're designing for. All the teams will have about 10 minutes here to spend a couple minutes on each area, the say, the see, the do, the hear. And feel free to chat among each other or kind of do it individually, figure out what works for you as a team. I'd encourage everybody grab some Post-it and capture things, but you can chat as you do that. And then just remember it's a practice run, right? In a full project, you'd probably, especially depending on the context, the type of stakeholders in the room and all that, you would likely spend much more time on that exercise, but we'll do a quick iteration. And then once you've done the outside, so 1, 2, you'll go through 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll make your way to the inside of the head. And that's where we try to capture the pains, the gains, and then there's a section for other if you want to put things that feel hard to classify. But pains is what it says, things that are worrying the user. Gains are things that the user wants. And we'll do the same thing with this part. Everybody grab a few Post-it and try to capture what we know. Again, it's a practice exercise, so you might not have enough data or insights to fill all of those areas in, and that's okay. Capture as much as you can. With this canvas, also don't get too hung up on what goes where. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if this should go in says or does. And that's not necessary. You know, the purpose of the exercise is to not like correctly categorize all these things. It's just to empathize and identify with the user. All right, so I am gathering that it's maybe a little difficult in accessing the data. So I'm gonna drop, the Drive folder in the chat, here, and that will give you 4 different folders. So just find the folder for your team. And I will put us into breakout rooms. If I can get this to work, fingers crossed. Oh, I don't see any rooms. Oh, there they are. All right. Looks like we have a couple bigger teams, a couple smaller teams. I have a couple folks that don't look like they have a room. Oh. Okay.
Lena?
Yes.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Hi.
I didn't consolidate or move the participants, but the room sizes, one of them had 10 and the others all had 7.
Yeah.
Did you just want to leave it like that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Because that way they see their name, they don't get too confused with where they're supposed to be.
I see. Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna set a timer here real quick. 10 minutes for this activity. I'm gonna set a timer. It's playing. I don't know if the music is working for me, but that's okay. Okay, let me make sure that this is all working quick. Everybody's in their teams. So when I close the rooms, they should all just be coming back to me, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have the little breakout rooms pop up and it just says like options, broadcast, close all rooms?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Whenever you want to bring them back, you'll just press close all rooms and that'll just suck them all back in here.
Okay, cool. I think I should be good to go. Hopefully the timer works for everybody. I guess this will be the test run.
Yes, ma'am. If you would you like me to stay on here for more or?
I think you're okay. Maybe if you know, if an emergency happens, maybe if I can just email you, but I think
Yeah,
we should be okay now.
I'm available. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that I can, if you do need me, send me a message. I'll be right back.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No problem. Good luck with the rest of it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey. Hello. Are you rejoining the session?
Yeah, I'm traveling. My flight just came into Washington, D.C., and I was in a taxi and trying to check
Yeah,
in.
I remember Lily said you were traveling. So I can move you. They just went into their rooms to do some group work. I can move you into your team room, but I know that Miro does not work on a phone browser. You will not be able to participate. You can only view.
Okay.
But if you're interested or if you're able to join from a computer at some point, I can move you there.
No, I actually left my computer back in Kentucky because I'm only here for one day. So
yeah, apologies. I'm actually gonna stop